Ports come in so many different shapes and sizes that it can be quite hard to keep a track of them all at times, and that's kind of what I'm here to do for you today, because few games will only ever be released on one console, and most will end up being ported to multiple different systems. So a developer has to be careful, because it's basically inevitable that their game is going to end up on different systems, and if you aren't careful, you're probably going to screw it up.
I didn't really think about it when deciding to talk about this topic, but there really are a ton of ports out there. It's a shaky thing to define, since simultaneous releases aren't really the same thing, because these titles are typically developed with those systems in mind, but I always assume that ports are something that happens later down the road. And it's almost always a good thing, since it allows other people who might not own that original console a chance to play a game that was deemed important or successful enough to make the switch, but damn! There sure are some lazy developers out there just looking for a quick buck. Making ports isn't an automatic process and does require a base level of thought behind it, but apparently that's too much for some people. Clearly they'd rather be in bed watching something pointless on Netflix. And there is a lot of that, because some of the best stuff isn't available in certain regions, and Into the Spider-Verse only recently came to the UK, and before that I was indebted to VPNs like Surfshark, who were kind enough to sponsor this video with all of their international server connections. You can use Surfshark to connect to over 1,800 servers in 63 countries so that you can unlock exclusive streaming libraries from places like the US and Japan and all their magnificent entertainment. For example, we don't have HBO Max in the UK, and at some point I'm gonna want to watch Zack Snyder's 4-hour Justice League thing, so Surfshark is pretty perfect for that. Plus, I should mention that there's some more serious applications, since online security is more important than ever these days, and Surfshark can help secure your data with industry-leading measures by using uncrackable encryption and the best VPN protocols on the market. So you can join public Wi-Fi, safe in the knowledge that your personal data is protected. Surfshark is easy to install and can run on unlimited devices from a single subscription, so you can safely do your exciting internet stuff on a massive number of platforms, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 live customer support, that's a hell of a lot of good stuff. You can go to surfshark.deals/RabbidLuigi and enter the promo code RabbidLuigi for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. That link is also in the video's description if you don't fancy typing all of that out. Secure your connection now with Surfshark.
Alright, okay, I'm still in a Game Boy though. Please help.
The Switch sure is a neat piece of kit, ain't it? Nintendo did well to bounce back from the Wii U and share with the world a console that everyone wants to get their hands on, but also by blurring the lines between handheld and a console that you need to plug into a TV, they gave it a unique selling point. It may seem underpowered when compared to the other heavyweights that are around at the moment, but you do notice the upsides when you're in bed playing Skyrim while your girlfriend is watching Gilmore Girls. The Switch came in for a fair chunk of criticism over just how many ports make up its library, but really there are so many that are really well executed that I don't really give a rat's ass. Except not all of them have been made properly, and for every game like The Witcher 3 that's been compressed by geniuses and wizards to fit on a Switch cartridge, there's a game like the 2018 edition of WWE 2K. I'm not a religious man, but at times I pray for divine intervention. That's the only way of solving this mess. Oh god.
These yearly franchises are generally easy targets when it comes to pointing out their flaws and their bugs and their glitches, because usually the devs behind them are preoccupied of trying to meet their yearly deadlines than trying to do any kind of quality assurance. And you know, that's an important thing to do, but also if we can fix it later, might as well do it later. WWE 2K18 though is a special type of glitchy, the type that we don't often see, but if I'm being honest, I wouldn't mind seeing more of in the future.
Obviously only on games that I don't really care about, and I'm sorry wrestling fans, I don't really give a shit about WWE 2K. I appreciate that you can have a lot of fun with these games when they work properly, and being able to create your own characters is endlessly entertaining, but honestly the many ways in which 2K18 can be broken beyond all recognition kind of elevates it beyond a mere video gaming adventure. Evidently, it isn't anything more than a simple port, and hasn't been tailored to the Switch's hardware or anything, because that would require effort, and these games come out every year, and effort is a thing that the devs need to conserve. The Switch isn't as powerful as other consoles, and damn does 2K18 do a good job of demonstrating that, as it chugs like a calculator being asked to run GTA 5, as the very fabric of reality begins to peel back for you to gaze at the horrors that lie beneath. I am glad that this game exists though, and not just because of all the entertaining glitches, since it's a showcase of what kind of product you end up with when you don't put any work into optimizing your game for a less powerful console. If Rockstar can get LA Noire working pretty nicely on the Switch, 2K can spend a few extra hours fine-tuning their wrestling game so that it doesn't look like this. Put maybe 10% of the work that the character customization has into making sure your ports aren't terrible. I am willing to sacrifice sites like this. Hot damn, the PS1 was the coolest fucking thing! This machine had Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, holy shit, it even had Gex the smack-talking gecko! The PS1 rode a wave of momentum all the way through the 90s, drowning every competitor in that time and leaving behind a legacy that is still talked about to this day, but that legacy would be heavily challenged in 1999 when Glover was released on the console. What a great game this was! You play as a glove called Glover, who has all the powers that a glove has, like keeping hands warm and slapping balls and being used to duel a man, I guess. So I'm really glad this game was made and received decent reviews on the N64, but oh boy, it should have stayed there. I mean, it makes sense why it didn't, because the PS1 was more popular than Oxygen, and comparably the N64 was more akin to some kind of skin disease, so Hasbro sought to make the jump and hopefully earn more money.
No.
I can't be too hard on Glover, because when it works well, it's got a lot of creative ideas to share with the class. It's a platformer where you babysit a ball through a level to bring crystals back in order to save the world or something, and some of the level design is pretty damn amazing as far as a platformer goes. The switch to the PlayStation 1 was not good for anyone, though, since somewhere along the way the graphics got turned down, and yeah, it feels like Glover is struggling to run on the PS1 with long loading times and a lot more movement lag. It's effectively the same game, but so poorly optimized that the reduction in draw distance makes some levels way harder and more luck dependent, and it's very hard to appreciate all the good this game did on the N64 when it's significantly more awkward to play on the PS1. It's hardly one of the standout platformers in the genre, but if you only played it on the PS1, you'd think it was one of the worst games on the system, and it kinda is, but Glover still has a lot to offer anyone if you can find the right system to play it. If you're that desperate to find your quota of sentient gloves, then you gotta do your research. And slap those balls!
I have seen true horror. It comes to me as a waking nightmare that chills me to my core and forces me to question my place on this plane of existence. There is no escaping the true inevitability and terrifying nature of the PC port. You know, it's just, I don't know how they do it, but they just fuck it up every time, and it's really frustrating.
How hard can it be to port a game to the PC? As funny YouTube man with very little experience of developing video games, I have no idea, but there sure are a lot of games out there that struggle to make the transition from home console to being in some kind of functional state on your laptop or your desktop or your geriatric tombstone that could play solitaire once but not a lot else. Yeah, that's part of the problem, since with consoles you know what your user base is working with, but PCs come in all different shapes and sizes, so you've got your work cut out for you when it comes to porting a video game. That being said, I don't think Resident Evil 4 helped itself by not having mouse support for a PC game. Yeah, I don't see a problem with this at all. This is just so wrong that I'm not sure I can even describe it properly. The most satisfying version of Resident Evil 4 out there is the Wii version, since the pointer controls let you have complete control over where you aim your guns, and has the unusual side effect of making the game kinda easy, since you were never meant to have this much control. You'd think that a mouse and keyboard would feel as good if not better than waving a Wiimote around, and to be fair, when Resident Evil 4 HD came out in 2014, Capcom were able to work in mouse support, but I don't know, it feels weirdly floaty rather than the added precision you'd expect. 2007's Resi 4 on the PC though, fuck me. This is such a weird game to play. I found some footage from Stop Skeletons from streaming, and it's just so bizarre seeing a third-person shooter being controlled like this. You can download a fan-made mod for this version of the game that will enable some kind of mouse-controlled aiming, but it's not quite as precise as I would like it to be, and besides, I feel like that simply papers over the cracks left by Capcom being so goddamn lazy with this port. I know Resident Evil 4 is everywhere these days and has been moved to every console under the sun, but in 2007, it was this, the PS2 version, and the original on the GameCube. That tells me that Capcom simply copy and pasted either of those versions and forgot that PCs usually require this weird lump of plastic that is used to do something, I don't know! The rest of this game works fine, and hey, it's one of the best games ever made, so it's not a complete write-off, but you aren't likely to find a more awkward experience out there. Loving the maximum effort, Capcom. Keep up the good work. Did you know that it's Sonic's 30th birthday this year? Yeah, I don't think you'll find people are excited in the same way as people are for The Legend of Zelda or Pokemon doing something huge in 2021, but this year should be a golden opportunity to rebuild Sonic's fractured reputation. The main concern, shared by many, is that Sonic rarely takes advantage of an anniversary year, since famously 2006 was a hell of a year for this franchise, where instead of celebrating the 15th anniversary of one of Sega's most valuable franchises, they just casually created two of the worst games ever made instead. I mean, how'd you even do that? I get that crunch was a thing 15 years ago and Sega didn't have managers who knew what they were doing so that these projects would be finished on time, but how do you fall so far below expectations? Clearly it's best to just have no expectations whatsoever and be pleasantly surprised by whatever turns up. There's no other way of surviving Sonic's 5-year cycle.
At some point, you do start to feel sorry for the people who are working on Sonic games, because I'm sure that there's at least a handful of them there that know what they're doing, but they're being forced to work on one misguided project after another, and all they have to show for it is just a list of really crappy video games. 2006 was a special year for Sonic, and really in the end not so much for celebrating the 15th anniversary, because not only did they make one of the worst games ever made, but also one of the worst GBA games ever made. Fucking how?
Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis is an absolute tragedy of a video game. No, seriously, play this game if you want to feel so very cold and indifferent about the state of Sonic games and want to discover just how poorly made a port can be. It's a simple enough idea: take one of the most iconic games from the Sega Genesis and find a way of squeezing it onto the GBA without making too many sacrifices, since this thing is pretty fancy, but I don't think it has any blast processing, so good luck, friendos! Honestly though, if Nintendo can port A Link to the Past and Super Mario World onto the GBA, it shouldn't be too ridiculous to expect Sega to be able to move Sonic 1 onto the same console, and yet, shit! Do you not know where this is going? Sonic Genesis, the name given to this incredibly ill-conceived video game, is a truly painful experience, punctuated by horrible screen crunch as a result of the bizarre decision to zoom the camera in, and leave Sonic and the player hoping for the best while hurtling through a level, not knowing what threats lie ahead. It's very hard to play this game at the speeds it was designed around, with the game quickly resembling some obscure form of torture in levels like Labyrinth Zone, which is just enough of an underwater maze to slowly drive you mad. There's also a bit near the end where you're too zoomed in to see the hazards, and honestly you have to memorize the patterns, and this is fucking Sonic! Oh my god! None of this is fun, let alone a satisfying celebration of Sonic's 15th anniversary, but everything starts to fall into place when you find out that this game had 1 month of development time put into it. At some point, as you watch Sonic grind along to the painfully stilted frame rate, you start to realise what a poor idea it was for Sega to call this Sonic Genesis. As if Sonic Jesus was putting too much pressure on a port that was made redundant just a few days after its release, when the Sega Genesis collection came out on the PSP, featuring a good version of Sonic 1. One day Sega will take this franchise seriously again. In another world, Sonic Genesis would be as bad as things could possibly get. Porting one of Sega's most important games onto what is actually a more powerful console, but botching it so badly that it might even be the worst Sonic game released in 2006, is the sort of achievement that no one would want on their resume, and yet, we can go deeper. We can go to a place where video games aren't so easily redeemed, where developers make earth-shatteringly bad decisions, where no good can be found. Atari were up to all sorts of no good in the early 1980s, which mainly took the form of filling up the market with their games and dominating the industry to the point where a few shaky decisions from them would cause the whole thing to fall down like a house of cards made of wet cardboard. And wouldn't you know it? That's kinda what happened. You can point the finger at E.T., but that was merely the straw that broke the camel's back. A back brought to breaking point by Atari's version of Pac-Man. It's the perfect concept, one of the most popular arcade games that you can now bring home thanks to the Atari 2600, the best console on the market. When do the bad decisions come in, because this sounds pretty great so far? Ah well, you wouldn't have too long to wait, since while Atari porting some Pac-Man is a great concept, the 38 days given to do this isn't. It really isn't, since most Atari games had 3 to 4 months of dev time behind them, but with what could have been one of Atari's most successful video games, they butchered the port so hard that it is barely recognizable as Pac-Man. It's horizontal for a start, but also the hardware limitations of the 2600 means that it's just the same level over and over again with ghosts that flicker and occasionally disappear, killing you pointlessly and disappointingly. Rumour has it that this version of Pac-Man was never meant to see the light of day since it was an early prototype of the game, with major features missing like more than one level, or you know, Pac-Man looking up when moving up. And that's just really, really bad. This game should have been easy money for Atari, but they either ran out of time or got complacent and thought that it wouldn't require a lot of effort to bring to life. And really, do you blame the general public for losing faith in video games when they were butchering the face of arcades? Sonic Genesis was bad, but Atari's Pac-Man was damaging, and there aren't too many effective ways to defend that. I too like my money wasted.
This RabbidLuigi and Atari's Pac-Man will obviously go down in history as one of the most devastating games ever made for what it did to the market, and also obviously one of the most disappointing because it should have been really good. But also, it's comfortably one of the laziest because it really should have been good and everything was in place for it to be good. A fact that Atari demonstrated just a year later when they made Miss Pac-Man for the Atari 2600, and surprise surprise, it's actually quite good. So just know that no matter how bad things can get, if you're willing to be lazy, they can get a hell of a lot worse.
Hi, just want to give a quick shout out to some of my top supporters on Patreon. We have Ramon Alberto, Jerome Kiryu, Fusion Warrior, Sarah Malon or Malion, I haven't got that one corrected for me, Christopher Robinson, Joe Creamer, and Scott Riker. Thank you all for supporting what I do on YouTube, and if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/RabbidLuigi, where I post updates and behind the scenes stuff, and we generally have a really good time. Also, what topic would you like to see me cover next? Leave your suggestion in a comment on this video, because I'll be taking the best ideas and making a poll on my community tab, which you can then vote on to decide what the next video is about. I'll be announcing the winner of the poll over on my Twitter, so make sure you follow me so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.